Are you new to sewing, getting ready to start, but would love some pointers before you get going? Here's 10 tips for beginner sewers. Hi, I'm Emma from Studio 77. Thanks for stopping by. I've been sewing since I was a little girl, and I've been a creature costume maker for the past 18 years. I've helped to create such iconic costumes as the Batsuit for Batman Begins, Chewbacca for Star Wars, and Iggle Piggle for In the Night Garden. Today I'm going to take you through my top 10 tips for beginner sewers. Don't forget to stay to the end because I've got a bonus tip for you that you're going to love because it's going to help you sew straighter lines. So let's go. The first tip is to practice, practice, practice. Start off with small, easy projects and practice your stitching. You can literally get a piece of paper, draw some wavy lines on it and stitch it through the machine to get your stitching really on point and to just keep those stitches where you want them. Number 2, a lot of tension issues can be the cause of the bobbin. So if you're having tension issues where the thread is pulling through from the bottom wrongly, or there's lumps and bumps where you don't want them, just check your bobbin, because 9 times out of 10 it's because the bobbin's been wound on wrongly or it's loose in the carriage of the machine. Just check it. And also another tip when you're having tension problems is to completely rethread the machine. Take the thread out, take the bobbin out, rethread the whole thing, put a new needle in, and usually you can solve your tension problems. Number 3 is also similar to tension, and the way that you can stop getting that bird's nest at the beginning of your sewing is by holding the threads at the back of the machine when you start sewing. This is a technique that we use on industrial machines, but for domestic machines it works really well too, and sometimes it can just help to gently, please don't pull your work through the machine, but just gently guide the work through so that it doesn't get stuck on those first few stitches. Tip number 4 is to use the right tools. You honestly don't have to spend a fortune. I've actually done a little list of top 10 tools for beginners, which I will link to in the corner of the screen, and these will keep you going for a long time through many different projects, no matter what kind of thing you're sewing, and you don't have to upgrade your tools until you need to. Tip number 5 is to follow the pattern step by step. In a similar way to baking, if you go off piste from the pattern and think you can skip a step, then things can go wrong quickly. You want to start with some easy patterns and then move on from there. I will link to my easy tote bag sewing pattern, and I've also got a playlist on my channel for beginner sewing projects, so that's a really good place to start. Tip number 6 is to iron as you go. Now, you may be tempted to sew loads of seams and then iron it all together at the end, but trust me, some projects you just simply cannot do that. You have to iron each seam sequentially in order for the project to work. So it's important to remember to iron each seam as you go. Now I'm just going to stop for a second and have a quick note. If you're finding value from this video, please do hit that thumbs up like button and subscribe so that you don't miss out on new content coming up. Tip number 7 is about when you're threading your machine. Make sure that the presser foot is up so that when you thread the machine it's a lot easier, all the mechanism is looser and your tension isn't engaged. When you put the presser foot down on the machine, the tension is engaged and it's a lot harder to actually sew the thread through. Another tip as well, which may not be obvious to some, is to snip the end of your threads. That's going to stop all those loose kind of hairy bits of the thread so that you can actually thread through the machine easier. Tip number 8 is to buy good quality thread. Please don't buy cheap thread, you're just going to find it snaps, it causes tension problems and you will have a headache. Trust me on this one. The best thread that I recommend is just a regular Sewall Gutermann 100% polyester. They come in thousands of colours, and if you're starting out you can get away with just buying white and black. You don't need to buy all those different colours, but if you want a more professional finish or if you're doing top stitching, then get the thread that matches your project. Tip number 9 is to change your needle more often than you think. You should change your needle every 4 to 6 hours when you're sewing. The needle can get blunt. You may find that this has a knock-on effect with your tension. You might find that it's skipping stitches. So just keep that needle nice and sharp. And also you need to make sure you're using the right needle for the right project. I have an upcoming tutorial which when it's up I will link to in the description, and it's going to go through all the different needle choices so that you can make the right choice for your project. Tip number 10 is when cutting your fabric, be sure to cut along the correct way of the grain. This will be on your project, or if it's not a dressmaking project and there's no information on the pattern, don't worry, just make sure that it's all going in the same direction. It's also especially important when it comes to fur, that the fur is all lying in the correct way for your plushie or your toy or whatever project you're doing. You don't want to end up with a creature with the fur going up towards the head and the other side going down towards the feet. It's just going to look wrong. So make sure you're following the grain and the correct way that the pattern tells you. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by the grain follows the edge of the fabric, the edge of the selvage, which is the edge of the fabric, which is the bit that has all the writing, or sometimes it has little coloured dots to show the different ink colours in the fabric. That is called the selvage. And next to that, going parallel to that, is the grain, the weave of the fabric. So just make sure all your pattern pieces are cut in the same way, because it can have an effect on your project. As a thank you for staying to the end of this video, I have a bonus tip number 11, and this is to get you sewing even straighter seams, and it's really good if you're doing a lot of sewing with a similar seam allowance, and that is to just stick some washi tape to your machine so that you've got the correct gauge away from the needle. So you obviously want to measure away from the needle to where the washi tape needs to be, then place the washi tape down on the machine, and then you can sew knowing that all your seams will be the same. So there you have it, not 10 but 11 top tips for beginner sewers. If you have any more tips or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you'd like to see an easy to follow tutorial, you can click one of the cards on the screen right now. Thanks very much. I'll see you in the next tutorial.